Oh, why did I shut that off? Hey, cool. We are live. Hello and welcome, everyone, to episode 86 of the Gretsch Afternoon Drum Break. I'm your host, Gretsch artist Neil LaFortune, coming to you all the way from Orillia, Ontario, Canada, 90 minutes north of Toronto. I'm grateful and excited to be chatting with the amazing Nick Buda today, who has played either live or in the studio with many diverse artists such as Colonel Bruce Hampton, Derek Trucks and Susan Tedeschi, Jewel, Taylor Swift, Kenny Chesney, Lionel Richie, Dolly Parton, Martina McBride, and many more. Originally from Cape Town, South Africa, and making Nashville home for many years now, Nick recently finished a residency at the Sphere in Las Vegas with Kenny Chesney. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Nick Buda.
Thank you so much. Very nice intro. You're hired.
Thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you're busy doing recording and playing with different artists and whatnot. Appreciate you carving out a little bit of time. So I wanted to start with kind of what your the last couple months has been like for you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's been quite a whirlwind of a summer, I will say. So I tour with Kenny Chesney, which often just happens in the summer times. And last year and this year, we did residencies at the Sphere. So it started late spring or maybe early summer even. We got together to start rehearsing and carving out what the set was going to be for this year's residency. Obviously, we wanted to make it different than last year. There was obviously different video stuff that we had to work with as well. And Kenny is always, he decides what songs he likes ahead of time, but then it really comes together while we're rehearsing, because some things just don't feel as good, or he'll think of things. I mean, honestly, he'll think of things on the spot in rehearsal, like, oh man, it'd be great to do. And then whatever prep we've done to that point, all of a sudden that changes. So it's a work in progress almost until show one. And even actually, to be honest, even past show one, the set, after all that work to get a set, we'll do the show. And in the show, he's just not feeling whatever he's not feeling. So we change the set, and night two might be very different than night one, based upon whatever's happening. But the band's always really prepared for whatever, regardless. So we did the prep work. Since we had done the Sphere before last summer, we got into it on 10. The first show was through the roof. It was great. And then it was over, honestly, before we even could wrap our heads around what was going on. I mean, just around the point that we felt like we were in shape and my hands were all nicely calloused the way they need to be, we had like 3 shows to go and we were done. So that flew by. And then the day after our last show at the Sphere, we flew to Maui because Kenny wanted to have the whole band in a video that actually just came out on wherever you see videos, Instagram and YouTube and whatnot, for a song that's on his new record called Goldfish. Sorry, getting the title right. Called Goldfish. So the whole band went to Maui for 4 days or something like that and shot this video, and obviously had a great time as well, which is apparent in the video and all that. And then, I came home, and days after that, the family, that was my opportune time to go with the family, go away for a little bit. So we went away for a few weeks. So I got back from that a couple weeks ago, and I've just been sort of diving back into session work and stuff around town.
Man, that is amazing. Yeah, the summer has flown by, and it seems as though everybody has been out touring this year. I mean, from whoever thought that you would see Rush and Toto, the Romantics, and all of these bands that you figured were AC/DC, Iron Maiden. These were just in Toronto over the last few weeks, and I think they've been everywhere. And that's awesome.
It's so cool. It's so cool that there is still revenue to be had, and the people want to get out and see real live music. It doesn't, like, obviously new artists are getting into this as well, but the fact that, I mean, I love seeing the whole revitalization of Rush and their fans being so into them being out right now, and it's a great, it's really fun.
I went to the first Toronto show, and it was very emotional. Been a huge Neil fan. He's the reason I play drums, and especially being Canadian, near and dear to our hearts. And there was just such a great vibe in the room. We were all rooting for Annika. Man, I have goosebumps thinking about it now. And it was just never ever thought that I would see them again. And I can't believe how happy Geddy and Alex and everybody look.
It's a beyond what you could have imagined as the best case scenario, with Neil being such a high profile and unique player and such the center of, center of sound of that band, and to have somebody come in and be able to capture that vibe as well as put her own thing in. But I haven't seen him live, but I've seen a bunch of clips, and it's great.
I've never seen so many people post clips, like entire shows, and it's great for people who don't want to shell out the money to do that, but amazing. So what else have you done before the Kenny thing? What's your whole year look like? What have you been doing? A lot of sessions at your place, the Loft, or other rooms?
Yeah, I do. I do a fair amount of things in my room at the Loft. It ebbs and flows, and sometimes I'm almost, maybe not backlogged, but I've got a bunch of stuff that I get done for different people because they find me through a record I've played on. And, these days it's so easy to connect. They can find me on Instagram easily.
Right.
And then we strike up a conversation that way. And they may live in, Belgium or whatever. And still I can do the tracks for them. And it's a very easy back and forth, so I do a fair amount of that. But not as much still as I do around Nashville. I still do work in studios around town, either for label artists that you would know the name of, or there's obviously a lot of artists that come here from out of town that aren't big artists, aren't signed. I work on a lot of those sessions as well. So it's all over the place.
And is it mainly country, or is it kind of other things as well?
It's really varied. Most of the bigger artist stuff ends up being some form of country because that's most of what's coming out of this town on that level. But when folks come here to record, it could be anything. It could be old school country. It could be heavy rock. And I have no idea until we're in the session. I see the first chart. I hear what they're going for, or whatever the thing is, and we're off. That's how it works, which is awesome because I know all the guys. There's a however many number of us that are in this session world here. So it's a great camaraderie. We all get like, hey, what's up? Great to see you again, blah, blah, blah. And then we jump into whatever it is that nobody in the room knows and other than the producer and the artist. You know what I mean? So it's great.
So you have no idea what you're going to hear. No idea. And you're going in there cold, and they tell you, okay, this is either an old school vibe, or this is, a bro country thing. And here's are you reading Nashville numbers as well while you're doing that? Nashville
numbers. That's the basis for all things. And thank goodness, because, these sessions are, the Nashville way of doing sessions is, it's sort of union based, which also means that it's very on time. There's no we'll get started around 11. It's the session starts at 10. I get there at about 9:15 to get sounds. Everybody's kind of rolling in as I'm getting sounds. And then we start at 10. And the lunch break is at 1. And then the session 2, if there is one for the day, is at 2:00, and that is either with the same artist, or I might have a 2:00 with another artist at a different studio. But it's so scheduled that it allows us to do multiple artists in a day if that's an option. It's not one of those we'll get done when we get done. It's we are, unless they hire us for the day, in which case that is what it is. But it allows Nashville session musicians to be able to hop around from studio to studio if those scenarios pop up. So we don't, unless a producer says ahead of time, hey, can you bring an old kit because I'm kind of thinking this kind of vibe, or unless there's some specifics, we're showing up as blind as anything, which is the best case scenario because we've worked at building things on the fly. So it's almost I don't want to have the stuff ahead of time, have preconceptions of how I feel like the thing needs to be. and then get in and find out I was completely on the wrong track and the artist was thinking something else. And now I have to like, okay, let me shut all that out and get on your track of what you're thinking, which is still fine. It's just almost like we almost just should come in blind and this is the vibe you're going for, get it, and we're all there, you know. So
what prepared you to do this?
I think not having known Nashville any kind of charts. I mean, I didn't read charts at all when I first came here. You know, I was, in fact, just the idea of having to pay attention to, with my eyes, to something other than everybody else around me took a little while. I think what prepared me was playing along with music when I was a kid. I learned how to play drums by playing along with my favorite records, and I would record myself playing with them and then listen back when I was going to bed that night and see how close I was getting to the fills or the grooves or the whatever, the kick drum on the kick drum or whatever, you know, see how on it I could be perfectly. And I think the listening is really what it's all about, because like I said, we got a whole band of musicians playing these things for the first time, and we all communicate. Even though we're all looking at charts, we're listening to every little inch of what's happening. What's the vocal melody doing? What's the vocal rhythm doing? What's the lead riff that the guitar player is doing? How is it fitting with what I'm playing? How's it all, you know, all the things. And it's all happening at the same time. What's the bass player doing with the kick drum? It's all happening instantaneously in the moment. And I think the easier you can just do that without having to think about it, just be in it.
Right.
The better you are at responding to all the things that are happening without like, oh God, I'm, you know, freaking out or missing a thing on the chart because you're being taken away by what somebody else is doing.
Right. Or you see somebody reading and they're what they're playing is totally not what should be going on. You know, the musicians may not be playing something that works with what you're playing, and they don't have their ears open, which is.
That's right. You've just got to naturally have your ears open all the time. You know?
Man, it's all encompassing for sure. And folks like you make it look so easy coming up with parts. Playing with great time, of course, that's a given. You need to have great time, and you're probably not hearing the click so much or having to work with the click. You just play with the click as if
it's just in there. That's right. Yeah, I almost, the only time I question the click is when I absolutely can't hear it, and that's normally just because I'm just right on it or sitting right, you know, whatever. And then all it takes is just moving around a little bit to be like, oh yeah, no, there it is. And it happens. You know, you do a fill and it's just a little, moves up just a little bit or moves back just a little bit, or there's a part of the tune just feels like, I mean, to hear the click or to move around it is not meaning you have bad time. It means you're feeling the feel of where it is. I've had engineers that are, you know, back in the days where loops were such a present thing. There's still a little bit, but it was on everything. There was a loop. And I remember a couple of engineers, most of the time I'm pretty dead on it. I mean, I've had engineers producer engineers that go back and mess with the tracks later saying like, I didn't have to move anything. You're just so on the thing. And even, you know, it still feels good, but whatever, which is great. But I've had engineers in the past say like, man, that kick drum's just a little off of the loop kick drum or whatever. And I'm like, well, then fix your loop kick drum, because where I'm playing is where it's going to feel good. The loop is the loop. Anybody, if you want to grid it. But that's when anybody talks about pocket or where the feel is sitting in the song, forget about the drums, like where the feel is sitting in the song. Well, that has nothing to do with where the loop is, you know? Yeah. So I think just recalibrating our thought process on that is important. But yeah, no, I'm not really thinking about the loop or anything like that.
No. We had a couple of comments here. Rob Andrews, can someone explain what the Nashville numbers are? And Paul Eckberg, I'm sure you know Paul, from Nashville. Nashville number system is a shorthand music charting method that replaces letter chord names with numbers based on the major scale of a given key. There you go.
It basically, the number system makes things so easy because there's actually not too many specifics in it. So it leaves it open for the musicians to play what they want to play on the thing. It's not exact notes, it's chords and the song general outline, you know. And it also means that if a singer comes in and the key is wrong, you just change the key. The numbers correspond to a different key, and you don't have to have a bunch of guys out there recharting everything. Oh crap, the singer, whatever, you know what I mean? So it makes it very easy to move quickly through stuff and leave it up to us to come up with the content, you know?
Yeah, and you have that bird's eye view of the whole song sitting in front of you, and you don't have to flip pages, and because that sucks.
It does, yeah. Flipping pages is, yeah. And it's hard to do on a session. I mean, on a gig, it's hard enough, but on a session, you don't want to hear a page in the hi-hat mic when you're trying to move. Anyway, yeah, it's not a thing. But
right.
But it is, I will say, the Nashville number system is how it's not more adopted. I don't know, because it makes things so easy, and like I said, it leaves things up to us to say, what's in the bridge? Are we doing this? Or are we doing this? And as a group, we all decide, and we know what it is. We don't have to make notes or chart the thing. We're like, okay, yeah, we're going to go to this thing, done. You know,
and you're on a different thing than what they are. If you're on a written chart or you know, everybody's on the same page, so to speak.
Exactly.
Paul wanted to ask you, Nick, what is it about the Kenny Chesney camp which keeps you from burning out / wanting to leave?
Okay, it's a good question, because and I got to tell you, from my perspective, I'm not a guy that can just stick with a gig. Like, in fact, I've had lots of gigs, but I haven't had just one gig for more than a year or so at any one time. But the Kenny gig, first of all, Kenny's incredible. He is such a great dude, and that vibe that he puts off, which is real and legit, filters down from the top. So everybody in that camp, it's almost like, I didn't know it could be like this. Like, there's no drama, there's no crap. Wow. Everybody is super cool and really good at their job. Top of the heap on all sides, you know. So it makes you want to make sure you meet the bar always, both in how we are personally and player-wise, because the band is insane. They're mostly session guys that I've known forever in this town, and then and other folks that are incredibly musical, big ears, and everybody is bringing the bar up, you know, which is a great place to be. But the big thing too is, when I first came in, the band leader, who's been with Kenny for many years, it was the first time he had changed his live drummer in, I think, in 26 years or something like that. I mean, he had a guy from like the early days, you know. And when I came in, Wyatt, the band leader, said, "Listen, man, learn the songs, but don't learn the parts. You play what you want to play on them, and we'll come to you." You know, and that, for a gig that has been going for this long, was like, wow, that's incredibly refreshing, first of all. Second of all, let's see how far I can push these boundaries, and we'll see where I start getting resistance. You know, when they're like, maybe we pull it back just a little bit. So I went into those rehearsals and just like exploded on these tunes and all the different, I mean, some choruses are not at all what they were on the record, or since that record had been recorded for the last 15 years or whatever. And I was like, I just don't like that part. I want to do this instead. Expecting some sort of pushback, never got any. In fact, if any, they were like, "Oh my God, that feels so great. What is," you know, whatever that was. And so it was like I was like the right cog for this machine, and it really fit. And Kenny and I immediately got on so great, because I'd never worked with him before this, and immediately started working with him in the studio as well, which was a beautiful thing. And those are some of my favorite sessions because of the chemistry that we have and all that. And the fact is, I mean, it's not my whole year, you know. We go out for X amount of time.
Yeah.
And then I'm back to doing what I do here, because I love playing sessions, and I love playing random. I've got a gig tonight down at 3rd and Lindsley here in town. I take gigs because I love to play, you know, and I love artists. I love songs. I love all the things. So the fact that it's like taking the Kenny gig didn't mean that I had to close everything else up,
sure,
and just do this thing. It's concentrated when we do it, for sure, which is great, because like I said, I love the band and the whole crew, the vibe and everything. But I also love coming back and doing what I do around here as well. So I could honestly, I've never been in a situation where after most of the first year, let's say we're on tour, and at some point the Kenny's guy, sort of right hand man through the manager through the whole thing, came up to me and was like, "So how you feeling?" Blah blah blah. And I was like, "Listen, man, as long as Kenny wants to play, I'm there. Like as long as he wants me in the thing, I'm there regardless." It's because it felt so great to get to be me inside of this thing. It's great.
Such a great thing to have a home. You know what I mean?
And so rare, so unusual. There's no. People ask a lot about tracks and all that stuff. We don't have 95% of the show there's a click, but there's nothing else. There's a count off. There's a count off to the click, and there's nothing else. Everything you hear is from the stage. And then the only tracks we do have are some sort of slightly loopy-ish kind of thing, or some big, not explosion, but big verbed out things or whatever. But it's so rare, which is great.
That is neat.
Yeah.
Nick Saya has a question here.
Oh yeah.
Those questions. You know Nick, do you?
Yeah.
He says, Nick, were you a big fan of Rick Marotta? Your pocket reminds me of him. And who were your influences? So a couple questions here.
Yeah. Not specifically. I didn't go down the deep dive of Rick Marotta ever, but it turns out that some tracks that I really love, I found out had him on them because he's got a pretty diverse career as a session player. I mean, he's kind of all over the place. So I can't say specifically, but sort of yes, and my influences are pretty wide ranging. I love Carlos Vega.
Yeah.
Just the subtleness of his playing, the smoothness of how he took songs from part to part, and the little things he did, which made all the difference in where it was going. I love. Picaro, obviously for Picaro. Gad has always been kind of on top of the heap for me because, again, not only is he such a unique player, which I love artists and drummers. I love drummers that aren't just playing drums. They're moving the whole song and the whole band in a direction. With parts. I love that. And Gad is incredible with that. He also is incredible with setups. I remember seeing Gad with James Taylor just a few years ago. So he's, older now and is super subtle. And then he'll do something that's really an exclamation. And you kind of wonder whoa, where did that come from? Only to see what was about to come up and that was leading to I love that so much that you don't even see immediately where he's going. It's oh, okay. He already has that picture in mind, and that's how he got there. Obviously Vinny, because mind blowing, and diverse, he can blow all the top and then just settle in a nice groove, and there's so many. There's just Russ Kunkel for the early James Taylor stuff. So many soul drummers too that I just came up listening to without going into any deep dive, like Gadsden. There's so many that I played along with them. They influenced me without me even fully knowing how much they influenced me until later on, So yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning. I believe your mom wanted you to play piano, and I think this is back in South Africa.
It is, yes.
And then I don't know how long you played piano for.
Yeah.
But I read that you saw a drum kit sitting in the corner, and it kind of, you were drawn to that. Can you talk about that?
Well, it was funny because my mom made me take piano lessons, but I always loved the idea of playing drums. She had this leather ottoman, and I used to take her wooden cooking spoons and beat on it along with whatever music she was playing. And she always played good music. It was either Loggins and Messina, James Taylor, blah blah blah, whatever in that vein, and so she wanted me to take piano lessons. I really wanted to take drum lessons, but I wasn't very coordinated as a kid. I would draw stuff upside down. My hand-eye coordination wasn't there, and she was more trying to be protective of me being disappointed that I really wanted to play drums and then I couldn't, and then I just didn't have it. So finally, after nagging her forever, she let me take a drum lesson. The story you're talking about that's on some bio somewhere was my piano teacher. I took piano lessons in it was called like the Jazz Institute or something like that. And each floor was a different instrument. And the piano teacher had a little drum set in the corner, and he was teaching me Satin Doll. And I said, I tell you what, I'm going to go and just sit on the drum set and play it lightly. Can you play it on the piano? And it's just a light, it was just a light swing, not anything, and I hadn't taken any lessons yet. I just sat around kits whenever there was a kit to sit on. My aunt, my mom's sister, was a singer-songwriter artist in Cape Town. So she would have bands over rehearsing, and I would make my way to the drum set and, whatever. So finally, my mom let me take a drum lesson, and she came to pick me up and was like, so, how is he? And the guy was like, he can play. I just sat down and I just started playing. And so about not too long after that, 6 months or maybe a little more than that, we moved from South Africa to the States. But by that point, there had been a foundation of, I want to play drums. And so when we first moved here, we didn't have any money. We were in a very little apartment, obviously couldn't have drums. But I was able to get a little practice kit, which was just like metal discs with rubber pads, and the two top toms were also cymbals, and it's just and it made no sound at all. I would just have my headphones on and I would play along with. That's where it started. I couldn't obviously record it because there was no sound, but that led to getting an electronic kit, which made it perfect for recording. Because then I could beat along with headphones on and record what I was playing on top of what I was listening to. And that's how I was able to figure out how to do things, by listening back to that. When I would fall asleep every night, I'd get home from school, play for like 3 hours or something, dinner, homework, go to bed listening to what I played to earlier that day. And that just analyzing as I was falling asleep was really how I kind of learned how to do a lot of the things.
Man, you were like preparing yourself to be a session drummer, right?
It's all I wanted. Playing drums is all I wanted to do. And the truth is that there was never a difference in playing live or playing sessions, because all the drummers I followed they would record the record and then they'd go out on tour with the artist. It was only in Nashville that I was like, oh, people here see that there's a difference. And there is a difference in the skill of playing live and recording. There is a difference. But they really separated out here, and the session guys stuck to sessions, and the live guys stuck to live at that time for the most part. And I was like, that doesn't make sense to me, So yeah.
Now, what were the early lessons? Were you learning to read? Were you learning tech? Jesus, sound like Dom Famularo right there. Were you learning to read? Were you learning? So what were you? God rest his soul. Yeah. What were you learning in your early lessons?
Well, to be honest, I only had those lessons in Cape Town. Okay. And then I never had lessons again until right before I went to college. So in those early lessons, I think it was just, I don't really remember. It must have been just the early parts of the kick is on the 1 and 3, the snare, whatever it was. And it was, like I said, it couldn't have been more than 5, 6, 7 lessons, because soon after that we moved. And then when we got to the States, we didn't have money for lessons, and I didn't know anything about anything. I just knew that I wanted to play. Again, even on that practice kit, I remember the first day I had it, I think I played for 5 or 6 hours. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was 12, 13 years old. And it was just like, this is what I need to do. And that was kind of it. And then the only lessons I took after that were right before I went to Berklee. I took a few lessons to help me learn how to read, and some things to help I got a scholarship there. So it was partly like, how do I put together this thing in order to try and get the scholarship? And I had a teacher here who's a great drummer, taught me some, just the basics of like, okay, well, it's going to be a rock thing because that's what I do. And there's nothing subtle about anything. So there it is, and yeah, that was about it. And then Berklee, one of the teachers at Berklee that I had, the private instructions, was, I can't remember her name right now, but she was the one that was like, oh, you've got to change the way you're holding those sticks because you're going to start hurting yourself. It's like, I can't remember what I was doing, but obviously it was too much of a grip and not allowing mobility. And it was at that point that I started trying to change up how but I was 18 something years old at Berklee, realizing that like I've got to change the way I do things if I'm going to keep going in this
Right.
direction, you know. So anyway, a little unconventional.
Wow. Now, I think it was Vinny Colaiuta. You met Vinny
Yeah.
backstage at a Sting concert, which
Yeah.
is, tell us about that. And he's the one that recommended that you go to Berklee.
Yeah.
He attended Berklee for 5 minutes, I think. And,
Yeah, he did it. Yeah.
and blew through there. Tell us about that.
So a friend of my mom's was a journalist, and he was doing a biography on Sting. And so this is my maybe senior or late junior year in high school. Went to go see him. Can't remember the tour, but it was with the small band, you know, it was with Vinny, and it's great. And I was just, you know, cocky enough to go to the backstage door and ask for Vic. I was like, Vic Garbarini's expecting me, and the guy at the door was like, oh, okay, hold on. And then obviously he came up and he was like, oh yeah, come on in. So I went in with him, and immediately, you know, 10 minutes later, I'm in the backstage band room with the band. It's 20, 30 minutes before they're going on stage. So they're just all hanging out there. And we get into this whole conversation of, you know, Berklee, and Sting gets confused about the Berklee in Boston compared to the Berklee in California. And Vinny's explaining to him, and Vinny and I are talking about Berklee. I mean, it was bizarre to me that like I was actually in the room with Sting and Vinny talking about where I'm going to go to school, you know. And then, yeah, like I said, like 20, 30 minutes later, they were like, okay, well, we got to go. I was like, okay. And I went back out and watched the show. You know,
that is nuts.
Yeah, it blew me. It really blew me away. And it's not, I wouldn't say that Vinny was like the tipping point, because I knew I wanted it. Wherever I was going to go to college, I wanted to be playing drums. And Berklee just seemed like such an intensive route to take, from me being so intense about it anyway, that it seemed like a pretty natural fit, and it just kind of worked out that way. And having Vinny be a proponent for it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense, you know. So yeah.
Of course, right. So was it primarily jazz based, or was there a good mix of things?
Well, it was, because back then, first of all, I learned big time that you can't go to Berklee and not know who you want to be as a musician, because they're going to churn you through that system regardless. They're not going to say, hey, why don't you take some time and figure out, you know, it is a machine to some degree. But I quickly learned that jazz wasn't necessarily my calling. And although I liked the technical side of some of the playing, some of the fusion guys, I love watching, they blew me away. I had some chops, but I wasn't jazz driven so much. In fact, I appreciate jazz so much more now than I ever did then, you know. So I found my people there, you know. It was a little tough. The first couple of private instructors I was given were heavy jazz guys, and I'm just not gonna, like, I wasn't inspired to really go and practice any of the things, because it didn't gel with where I felt like I wanted to go. So then they would get frustrated with me and whatever. And then I found like the groove guys that were more in my line of thinking. And then from then on, I really kind of hit the thing, and I just concentrated on what I wanted to concentrate on: getting better as an overall player, being able to see how the notes are falling, you know, kind of almost have a visual. I had one instructor in a class, it was a small class, but he did a thing. There were 4 different kits set up, and they all had at least enough mics to be able to record enough to hear the kit. And he had a click at like 40 or something really slow. And that, whenever you heard the click, that was your beat 3. So it was like a reggae one, go, like, or even slower than that. And the idea was to be able to see the peaks, right? So just to be able to see where it was falling, and have a hat going and hit the kick drum right on that click. And everybody was like, you know, there would be like such a big variance. And at first it took a little while to get it. And then as soon as I saw it, it was like a scope. And then and being able to see that and understand that applies to kind of all things. Because then even if it's an up-tempo thing, it's still how it's seeing all the, I don't know how to explain it. It's like the little dot that's following the groove, you know, and where it can fall it's such a wide range of potential downbeats in that thing. You could be a little early, a little late. You just need to be able to see, kind of be able to feel where it is, but understand what that is, you know. And that class helped me a lot to understand. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, those slow tempos are great, and there's so much space in between.
Yeah.
Larry London used to say, man, with movie scores, you'd have half notes. He says, man, you could drive a Mack truck through those things, you know, because there was just so much space. But it's important to be able to feel subdivisions or be able to play good time.
Yeah.
At 40. Do you know who Mark Kelso is? Great Toronto drummer. He's kind of like Vinny and Gad if you put him in a blender.
Wow.
And he has a thing where he'll play a click at 30, but then he will do these polyrhythmic things. So you play the polyrhythm against 30. It's real. He's got a great DVD.
Oh, cool.
Video.
Yeah.
And it's whatever those are.
Right.
But that's I love practicing that stuff. And a lot of drummers aren't hip to working with time that way, you know.
Yeah. I feel like it's important because unfortunately we're in an era now of Pro Tools where it's whether you're playing with a click or not, there is a grid involved, and you can see the notes almost before you hear them.
Yeah.
Being able to feel where those downbeats are is I hate to think that it's a lost art, because I do feel like listen to it. Like sometimes even when I'm working with an artist, I love nothing more than when they decide, hey, let's just turn off the screen for a second when we're listening back to a take or something. That might be the thing for the record. Let's turn off the screen, and it's going to sound different, you know, just by not having that sense working. If I'm producing, I love doing that. It's like, okay, great. Let's make sure we have it. Let's just listen through, turn off the screen, just be in the space. You know?
Yeah. Do you do any gigs that don't have a click, or is your gig tonight you have a click running?
No.
That's great, right?
Definitely one. Yeah. I don't like anything like that on a club gig. I don't see the point. You know, I mean, I'll use a little metronome to get started, just to make sure I'm in the right tempo for the tune. Get it, count it in, turn the thing off, we go. You know, and if I need to, if it's a singer-songwriter thing, and I need to just make sure that by like chorus 1 we're still in the range, I'll just maybe hit it while we're playing and just kind of look at it for a second. If we're a touch slow or fast, I'm not concerned. I just want to make sure that I didn't rush a thing, or another player in the band didn't drag me in a direction or whatever. Just make sure that we're still good, you know. And then, but other than that, no. In fact, I'll say that sessions and the Kenny gig might be the only scenarios that I'm listening to a click. And granted, that takes up about 90% of my playing, but still, you know,
Yeah. Paul Eckberg is asking, Nick, do you recommend that young drummers attend music university?
I don't know. Like it worked for me. I'm not sure where the road would have been had I not gone to Berklee. I guess I would have been in Nashville and played with folks, but I did learn a lot about going into situations cold with a group of players I didn't know that probably outplayed me, you know, to no end. So being nervous about it too, and getting through those things, as well as sessions. I did a lot of time doing film scoring sessions or other sessions. I mean, when would you do a film scoring session in random life? You know, I mean, that doesn't come up, especially not in Nashville. But it's a great experience to do it in a scenario like Berklee, where you're not going to lose a gig because of it. It's just part of the education, you know. And I think that's important with the session thing too. It's important to be able to go into a studio and get a lot of the super green stuff for folks that haven't recorded before.
Right.
You know, I know it's easy to say, I know how to play drums, or I know how to read charts, or whatever, I can do this, but the art of recording is an art. And the more you can do it before you get into a professional situation, the better you're going to get through that first thing, you know. So Berklee did help a lot there, but everybody's different. You know, some guys come out with a confidence and a relaxed confidence right off the bat that they maybe would just go into the real world just fine and not need any of that. It prepped me well. I think it really depends on who you are and the experience you have coming in, you know. So, yeah.
Did you connect with people there that you still work with today?
Yeah. But I don't know that connected with anybody that was influential in getting like me to the next step in my career. I'm like, I always assumed I'd go to Berklee, I'd be there for maybe a year, and then like whatever big cat would hear me and be like, you got to come with me, and I'd be famous. That was the scenario. That didn't happen so much. But I do still play with guys that went to Berklee with me. And like I say, the experience of playing with some really incredible players set me up to expect that, as opposed to just be plodding along with whoever. Like, yeah. I can, like, nothing against the person at all. I just know when I'm working with somebody that doesn't have that thing as a player, it's fine, but I expect that thing. And not because I think I'm so great, but just that I love creating music on that level, and that's when you find that, it's a really beautiful thing. When young folks are here and they want to get a coffee to talk about, like, how do I get into the blah, 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 whatever. Mm-hmm. One of the things I always say is surround yourself with guys that you look up to their playing. Feel like you're the weak link in the chain, always, and that you will constantly be working harder than you may have felt like you needed to if you didn't have those guys there, and I think it's really one of the most important things.
Wow, that's great. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Like the shift to talk about Gretsch drums. I know you are an independent, and you don't currently endorse any particular brand of drums right now. But yeah, with your resume and your background, and the pedigree and your experience with Gretsch drums, I wanted to chat with you. So could you tell us a little bit about like the first time you heard and or played some Gretsch drums? What was that all about?
I have a great Gretsch story. I mean, I'd always loved the idea of Gretsch drums, and actually, back in the day, I had actually tried to get a Gretsch deal, and this is nothing here nor there about my current situation whatsoever. But Gretsch was really the only company I wanted to get a deal with, and we're talking about before I really had anything going on. I think Taylor's first record had just done, it was doing something at least, but there was no huge. I didn't have a big resume as a session guy or anything like that. But what I did love is the first kit that I had gotten was from Gary over at Forks Drum Closet. And it was a Gretsch kit that I believe had come from the Gretsch main office, Gretsch Central. And Gary was very in with them because he's a huge Gretsch guy. And he had gotten a bunch of shells from them that had been display shells.
Right.
And so they'd been sitting for a very, very long time I don't think they had any hardware on them or anything. And I think he had gotten enough shells to be able to put together 2 kits. And one of those kits I got from him back in, I don't even remember. Well, it was probably 2004, 5 or something like that. Oh, and so, and I think I'd had Gretsch drums before that, but that kit, which I still have, was a great kit. And it was right when I first started doing sessions too. So I started using it in the studio, and then in 2010 we had the big flood here, and Soundcheck was doing my cartage at that time. So the kit was like all my stuff that they'd had of mine was in the flood, and it was floating in water for a week, So when I finally got to it, because it took a long time before they would allow people to even come into those buildings once the water went down because of all the stuff in the air and everything else. When I finally got to them, they were full of water. And I mean, they were in cases, but the whole case was full of water. So I had been told to go ahead and don't undo any of the rims, just cut all the heads enough to be able to get the water out of the drums. Yeah. And then they sort of gave us a sort of a triage place where all the guys there could have their drums set up with fans blowing in a big warehouse somewhere, blah, blah, blah. And I took those drums apart, every little bit, that stuff will rust, all the little springs that are in the lugs, everything. Cleaned everything, put it back together after a few months, because it sat like that for about 2 or 3 months so it could really dry. And they still sound better than ever. I still use them in the studio. They're incredible. They didn't warp at all.
leaving the rims on is
leaving the rims on helped, I think. Yeah, but the shells didn't warp at all. And they, if anything, if they're like a dark, they're sort of a dark wine red, like a red wineish kind of color. And they have these really cool streaks that go through the wood because it's a matte finish. It's not a wrap finish at all. In fact, the wrap finish probably would have been worse. The wrap would probably come off, but it's just there's no lacquer or anything on it, and it looks cool. But it also got its sound back, and it really, like, the kit's one of my favorites. So I have that, and then I also have I have a couple of old Gretsch kits, and I mean, I think I have 4 or 5 Gretsch kits, and I love them all. Yeah, I have an old Red Sparkle broadcaster that I use a lot on live stuff. If I have cartage on live stuff around town, or sometimes I'm in like the house band for something, blah, blah, blah. In fact, this is going to come up in a couple of weeks. I'm doing a BMI event where I'm part of the house band, and I always love using that old Gretsch kit for that kind of stuff.
like as in a 50s kit?
Yeah, and it's in beautiful condition.
And what are the sizes?
It's a 22, 13, 16.
Incredible.
That's it. Yeah, it's great.
I can't wait to see some pics of.
Oh yeah,
that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm still thinking about those drums being underwater. It's breaking my heart. I've got a lovely little walnut kit here from '81 and others, but I could only imagine what that must have been like. I mean,
well, I got to tell you that. So I had that kit was in cartage. I had about 8 or 9 snares, and then I had an old Ludwig kit at that point. That was the old Butcher Block Ludwigs. Wow. I had one of those in there. That kit did not do so well. The floor tom got a little oval, and other things happened. But anyway,
man, that's crazy. That's really crazy. Yeah. What is the burnt orange kit that I've seen of you?
That's the one I'm talking about. It's now burnt orange. It was more of a sort of a red wineish looking color once upon a time, but it got more orange as it faded and as the whatever time and whatever else.
That's beautiful. What are the sizes of that guy?
That is it's a 16 by is 16 or 18 by 22. I can't remember now. The kick is 22, and then it came as a 12, 14, 16 to floor tom, 46 floor tom, and then later on I had a 10-inch made for it. Okay. So I could do the 10, 12, 14, 16. The 10 almost matches. It's close enough that you wouldn't tell if you were a few feet away, but yeah, obviously it's a little different. But yeah, other than that, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Beautiful stuff. Amazing. I'd like to shift gears and chat about some of the varied artists that you've played with.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I was reading your bio, and we're talking Colonel Bruce Hampton, as one of your. Actually, was it Mac Gayden?
Mac Gayden, yeah. There you go. I love that you've done research. This is wonderful. So yeah, the Mac Gayden thing's awesome. I mean, I don't know if folks know who he is. He wrote Everlasting Love, which has been cut by everybody under the sun over the last 40, 50 years, maybe. And I met him because I was playing at his kid was putting on a surprise party for her friend when I was in high school, and my band in high school played that party, and he and his wife were there, and they came up to me afterwards and started. I was a junior in high school or something like that. I didn't know anything, and he said, "Man, I really love your playing," blah blah blah. 2 or 3 years later, I get a call from him. I guess yes, it was. I think I was even younger than that. But in my senior year of high school, I get a call from him and says, "Hey, I'm not sure what you're doing. I just made this record, and I'm getting ready to do some shows, and I'd really love you to come and play with me." And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing!" And so I went out and did these shows as an 18-year-old, getting ready to graduate high school, and the band was just all the heavy hitters. Byron House was playing bass. You can look these guys up, and they've played with. Byron's been with Robert Plant for a long time. Other people. Tom Rohde was the percussionist, and I didn't know who Tom was before that. And so we do a few gigs, and everybody's really nice. And you want to talk about greener than green, right? And I was watching TV one night, and there was a James Taylor live concert that came on, And all of a sudden, I see Tom Rohde back there. I'm like, holy cow! I just played with. Anyway, that was one of my first moments of like, wow, that's incredible. And I was so green that we were rehearsing at my house, like where like when I was going in high school. And at one point, we're rehearsing Everlasting Love to play for this show that's coming out. And Mac is talking to the guitar player or something out. And I asked Byron, who's the bass player, he comes over to me. I was like, hey, I got a question, man. I'm just wondering, of all the covers that this guy could do, why are we doing Everlasting Love? And he's like, because he wrote it. I was like, oh, there's another, okay, got it, foot in mouth, So so that's the Mac. And I came in contact with Mac on and off. I recorded with him many years ago. Wonderful guy. Yeah. And then the Colonel Bruce thing happened right after college, because one of those amazing players that I played with at Berklee ended up playing with, he's from Atlanta. He went back to Atlanta, met up with Bruce. They started playing. He wasn't crazy about the drummer that Bruce had at that point, whoever it was. And he was like, hey, man, do you want to move to Atlanta? I'd been maybe a year or so out of Berklee in Nashville, kind of trying to find my way. And then I moved to Atlanta and started playing with Bruce. And then that was a 2.5 year education. As much as Berklee might have been an education in paying attention to what I'm playing and all that, Colonel Bruce is like, okay, now learn about real life. Like, here we are. I was 23, 24, out there just hitting it with, the guys from Fish, or that's where I first met Derek Trucks and Susan. Right. Widespread, all those guys, Little Feat. I mean, we opened for Little Feat for a while, and then all of a sudden, I'm buddies with the guys in Little Feat that I used to play along with, like Waiting for Columbus and all those records when I was in high school. I mean, Richie Haywood was one of my big influences. Yeah. And now he would come and play with us when I was playing with Colonel Bruce. We'd do like the double drum thing on stage. So here I am playing with one of my heroes, and he's following me for the thing, and I'm 24, 25. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, it was an amazing learning experience, and also hard, because my ego ran up against walls really fast, because like Bruce was not afraid occasionally to like really hit me with like, what are you doing? This isn't musical, or this isn't, just mess everywhere. And it was a lot of sort of hard knocks to learn in that deal, but I carry a lot of the things that there were a lot of things that he taught me at that time that I, in my young ego self, didn't take as seriously, that I still think about, like sort of bigger life lesson things that still comes up regularly. Yeah, it was a big influence for me.
What a crazy experience. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, I knew your name, and I knew, of course, a lot of the highlights, and had seen you play, but digging a little deeper, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like the whole Little Feat and Fish. Yeah. And then how long after that did you were a couple of years in that band, and then you moved back to Nashville? Yeah,
that was kind of a crossroads right there, because there was a lot of drama that developed from that guitar player at Berklee. It wasn't a healthy scenario, and I'm really sensitive to vibes around me, and it got poisonous after a while, and so I had to make a change, and that was my whole world, like Colonel Bruce thing. So it was like, okay, well, what do I do now? My stomach was, it was a tough time, and so I'd considered going to LA and figuring it out there, or coming back to Nashville, where I'd had friends that had just stayed in Nashville when I'd left and kind of worked their way up the ladder. And I kind of thought, well, I know that town better. I know, I have these friends or whatever. Let me check that out first. And if after however many, whatever, if I want to end up going to LA, then I'll go to LA. But at least I had something to grasp onto, and it worked, So yeah.
Wow. Some of the first or early artists that you worked with in Nashville. Now, how long was it? It was quite a ways away, playing with Taylor, correct?
Oh, yes, I was a few years, but I was pretty lucky when I got here. The other thing that I did, which I tell folks as well that are have questions about how to whatever, is you got to be out. You've got to be out. It's like you're a little storefront. And if you don't go and promote the storefront, nobody's going to come buy anything, So, and when you're young, I mean, I don't go out as much anymore, obviously, but when you're young, that's what you do. You go out and you go see gigs, you go meet other players, other artists, other things, make sure that you are out there all the time. And that's what I did. But I also had a friend who I played in a band with in high school that had introduced me to a guy that was the band leader for this young artist at the time named Cindy Thompson. And Cindy had just had a number one at that point. In fact, I think she was the youngest, well, the fastest number one for a new artist or whatever, something like that. And he needed a sub for a weekend. I'd been here maybe a month, and he needed a sub for her. And we had hung out. And one night he was pretty drunk. And he came up to me and was like, "You play next weekend with whatever?" Blah, blah, blah. I was like, "Hell yeah, I can." And so I did it. And that was the beginning of I ended up playing with her for about 9 or 10 months. I just became the drummer after that. And the band was great. And I met one of my now closest friends who was also subbing in that first gig that I did, a bass player named Steve Mackey. And he and I have been tight ever since. And I was, again, still green. I'd never played a gig with loops before, and her gig was all about all the loops, right? So I mean, I came in like crap. I mean, this idea of I have to be on because the loop's going to keep going.
Right.
There is a thing that is going to keep it happening, and I can't mess this up. Was terrifying, but I did it, and it all worked out, and I still. Yeah. Anyway, I look back on those days pretty fondly. It was great.
Were you using in-ears at that point or headphones for
loops? I just used headphones because I didn't even know what in-ears were. I mean, it wasn't even a thing, Yep. At some point, I ended up figuring out. I think I didn't have in-ears made. I think I just used some Sony buds or something like that.
Of course.
And and back in those days too. I mean, it was we weren't using it wasn't a whole big rig. It was a mini disc player.
Yep.
And because there's less chance of skipping than whatever else. And the left side was the click for me, and the right side was the front of house. And that was about the extent of our setup. And it worked. And it's funny because I used to play along with tapes or CDs when I was learning how to play, and occasionally there would be little skips in it, and I would just learn to skip with the thing. I would learn where it was, and I would do it. So every once in a while, we'd be on a stage that was particularly bouncy, and that mini disc player would be bouncing on top of a whatever case, and it would skip. And I would just find where the downbeat was, and then I would hope that I went either forward with it. I hope it was forward as opposed to whatever. And at no point did it not work out. It was one of those things where I was like, somehow this was a valuable skill that I picked up. But those were the early days of Cindy. And then that gig went into, because I met players, it went into some other gigs. And then there was a point that I just decided I don't want to be dependent on the road my whole life. I saw guys, and nothing against the guys that do it. It just wasn't for me. I just didn't want to. The one thing I learned is that for a guy that's the hired gun for an artist on the road, that artist decides to take a year off or take some time or whatever, you're back at square one looking for another gig. And I just didn't want to be overly dependent on one other person's schedule, So at that point, I started trying to get into session work, and honestly, Taylor was the first thing that happened, which is also unusual.
Your story, looking back at it, it just must blow your mind to see how things have unfolded.
Yeah, and I think the biggest lesson is you can't see where the road's going until you look back on it, and you can see where you've been. You can only hope to connect the dots the best way possible. You try and make the right decisions as you feel like, well, how's this going to affect whatever down the road, or what potential great options might come from. I know I'm going to let these people down now if there's a decision to be made, but this other decision I feel like is going to be way better for me, potentially looking forward. You don't want to piss people off, but you try and make the calls you need to make. The Taylor thing, I could not have known that was going to be a thing, and I certainly couldn't have known that it would do what it, not only that it was going to be work for that moment, but that it was going to go where it went, obviously.
Oh my goodness. And the first 4 albums you played?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And of course, everybody and their brother, you hear it. And I remember back in the day hearing that we would play it at the neighbor's place. We've been here 16, 17 years, and like that's a pretty cool little drum intro, or little intro fill. And I'm like, and then listening for the pocket. So again, I'd heard you on that and filed it back. And in the beginning, I was a bit older and not necessarily into that. But man, there was some legitimacy of those killer players that were playing on those tracks.
Right. And there was something really neat about the chemistry that happened there, because I don't know how many folks know about that story, but her producer, Nathan, had not been a named producer at that point either. And none of the guys that played on it, well, me and the bass player, Tim Marks, we were young. We met very early on. And we were just trying to figure our thing out as well. So Tim had given me Nathan's number because I had just set up a little studio in my house, like literally a bedroom studio. There's nothing more than that. I was still learning, early days of learning Pro Tools and everything. And Nathan needed some tracks for somebody, but it was like very much basement demos. And I was even a little hesitant to call him because I wasn't very confident about my own ability, both in Pro Tools and session playing. But I did. And he came over and we just happened to hit it off. And I started, me and Tim and this engineer, Chad Carlson, the 4 of us started doing these demos all the time for different people. And Nathan was learning his production chops, and we were learning our session player chops and all the stuff. And about a year into that, one of those demos was for Liz Rose, who co-wrote a bunch of those early Taylor songs with Taylor. And she brought Taylor in as an artist who was already recording her first record. So obviously Liz was trying to get some demos done with her to get on that record. And Taylor just loved the vibe because it was just the 4 of us. And Nathan would just play everything else afterwards. Like we would do the demos, 4 or 5 songs or whatever it was. And then over the next week, he would just have them at home and he would layer them with all the stuff. And she just loved how that all worked, so much so that she went to her label head, Scott, and said, I don't want to do that record anymore. I want these guys to do my record. Like these complete unknowns that whatever. And of course he said, no, absolutely not. And she, as a 15-year-old, dug her heels in and said, no, this is what I'm doing, whatever. And so Scott let Nathan do bit by bit, like, okay, I'll give you just enough money to do 3 songs and we'll see how that goes, like shoestring. And that led to the next 3 songs. And we were just, I didn't know anything about anything other than, wow, we're getting paid more to do these tracks than demo rate, because union rates and stuff. Records obviously pay more than demos. So now I was getting paid a record, master rate for these. And that turned into the first record. And like, oh, cool. I heard myself on the radio. I thought that was really cool. But honestly, that was about it. Didn't really figure it was going to go much past that. And then friends of mine that were on the road, I don't really listen to a lot of country from my day-to-day at all. But friends of mine were like, man, did you play on that Taylor Swift record? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I think it's doing pretty well. I was like, really? So next thing you know, it's however much time has gone by, that record has done really well. And now we go to do the second record, which was the Fearless record. Yeah. And we were just psyched that we all got to keep doing it. And I will never forget the feeling of going into the studio for those first sessions, knowing before we even started that this was going to sell millions of copies, because that was the trajectory of the whole thing. And just knowing that everything we were going to do for this was going to be on that level, particularly as a young, I've been doing sessions for maybe a couple of years at that point, and just little bits and pieces, And then that Fearless record came out, and not only was it a great record in general, but it was a great sounding record. The drums sounded good on there. All the little things I was doing actually came out, And so yeah, it was a good start.
I'd say that's incredible. Was that your pork pie kit?
Partly there was that Silver Sparkle pork pie is on part of it, and I think that Gretsch kit might have been on part of it too. I think it was a combination of those two kits, and there were some days that they wanted two kits set up because they wanted to have one completely dampened to make little loops out of if we're going to do that, and then the other one for the big loud thing or whatever. And so I tuned one, had a little setup on one side, and then the big kit on the other side. Because it was those early records where it wasn't just going in like Nashville style and blasting through songs or just whatever. We were really experimenting with like, this sound could be cool or this could be cool. We'd have a bunch of different kick drum options or whatever. And still we would blast through it because the chemistry was so great. Taylor and Nathan were both so good at just saying, I love that. I don't know about this, blah, blah, blah. So it helped us direct pretty quickly how we're going through. And we weren't doing it full band. So everything was very skeletal from the get-go. It was sometimes Taylor would play piano, Nate would play acoustic, and Tim and I would be putting down the rhythm tracks to that. And that's all we're hearing. And then it's only afterwards that whatever, maybe all the electrics and keys and blah, 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 all this going on, So it was a neat way to do records. You really could focus on everything without all the instruments coming in at the same time and then figuring out parts from there, Yeah.
So Nathan and Taylor would kind of flesh things out, or more Nathan with maybe, or Taylor with her. I'm sure she had vision, what she liked.
Completely. I think that it was, I think that, I think Nathan is an incredibly musical cat. So he brought a lot of the stuff that helped influence the things that she wanted to hear. And she's also very good, even at that age, even from the very beginning, she was very good at hearing like, no, I will never forget for that first record, we were cutting something. Her vocal booth was right behind me. And we did a track and it was maybe the second or third take through. And I felt afterwards, I was like, that was good, but I want to do one more. And I remember Taylor coming before anybody said anything. She was like, guys, I think we have one better one behind it. And I was like, not bad for a 15-year-old who's sang 2 or 3 takes through the song. And that was a perfectly great one for her to feel the same way I did about where it was sitting in that moment. She was, I give her a ton of credit. Her musicality was pretty heavy, so it was great.
Unbelievable success she's had. And it's amazing that you're a big part of the early part of, like, I guess the country side of her career, man. That's I mean, and I don't want to diminish the other artists that you've played with, because I mean, after playing on those records, you've done a slew of other things. Let's chat about some of the other artists. You can pick. I mean, who was next, or who would you like to chat about?
I got to tell you, there's a lot of there's so many, and this is going to sound so like, I don't know, la-di-da, whatever, but there's so many artists that I've gotten to work with that have it's like it's 15 to 20 years or something of sessions, you know what I mean? So I can say that like some points that stand out, like honestly, I know like Dolly Parton's been all the talk recently with her unfortunate passing, but that was one of the highlights of my career. And I didn't grow up listening to Dolly at all. But holy cow, just being in her presence and then hearing her voice inside my ears when we're recording was, I mean, how special is that, And having some of these folks, I mean, obviously the Lionel Richie, the same, right? Lionel Richie. Yeah. I mean, he's what a character. What an awesome thing to have him come into the studio. He comes in with his whole posse with him, it's all his people, and immediately goes into telling stories, and we're all just, oh my God,
man, I bet
the best. And even that, those are like some of the more famous ones, but there's so many other artists that I've been with that I think are just awesome, and yet I can't pick out a particular moment in this conversation.
What did you do with Dolly?
What was the album? Honestly, I can't even remember, but I played on like 3 or 4 tracks on a certain record. But then what happened after that, which was so super cool, is So after I'd done that initial recording with her, she had fired her drummer right after that. And she decided, in true Dolly fashion, the whole like I can conquer anything. She decided, I'm going to do a tour without a drummer, but still with drum tracks.
Oh boy.
So I got called in to play, essentially to record all the tracks that she was going to use live on her show. So for that tour, and it was cool because they were like, here's her set list, doing like 9 to 5 and 2 Doors Down and all these tracks. Like she wanted those, like the live arrangements, but with the vibe of the old school tracks. So I got to be like that sort of, because those are such funky tracks when you listen to the drums are freaking great. So I got to play them like that, and then put the endings that they needed on them for the live thing or whatever it was. And whenever she would have a set list change, they would call me and say, Dolly wants to add blah, blah, blah. Can you come in the studio and do this? Sure. And sometimes it would just be one song, and I would be in there for literally 45 minutes. We'd cut the track, do a couple takes just to make sure, and I'd be gone. And so when she came time for whatever that record was at that time, she obviously still needed a drummer to do the talk shows with her. And because I'd been that guy, I got to do whatever TV shows that she did. You know, we did like Jimmy Fallon, which was great. We did oh shoot, was it Kimmel, or was it was whatever one where they, or it's in LA but it's outdoors, it's like an outdoor stage, and that was pretty great. And actually the great little story I have from that is they flew me out to LA to do the show, but the night before she was playing at the Hollywood Bowl. So obviously I went out to the show to see it, and I got to hear me playing from out front watching the show, because it was just her and the bass player and keyboard player and guitar player on stage, but you still had the full drums coming through, which were the tracks that I'd laid down for her or whatever. So I stood by front of house and watched it. And it was pretty neat.
That would have been strange, but really kind of neat as well.
Pretty fun. Yeah. So yeah, again, this road has been bizarre.
It's been amazing.
And I've found myself in a situation that, not too many years ago, pre the Kenny gig, I wasn't, the session scene, it's different now than it was before. And it's, music in general, how we consume music is very different than it was before. And it's
right.
And from a session player perspective, I found myself not really being in sync with what was wanted in the studio these days. There's a lot of cutting and pasting. There's a lot of, the whole art of playing a song isn't as important these days in the mainstream country world, recording world. And I wasn't loving it as much. And so like, well, what do I want to do? Like, where do I want to end up being? And then really out of absolutely nowhere, the Kenny gig came up, and I couldn't have imagined a better fit of a gig, first of all, because if somebody had said, who would you want to tour with? I certainly wouldn't have picked somebody in country, because I don't feel like I would pair well with anybody in the country world. The way that they approach shows, the way that you got to play like what's on the record, it's so confined.
Yeah.
I've heard recently a lot of guys talking about when they have a click, they also have this cue system.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like verse 1, 1, 2, 3, and whatever. And it's like, how stifling is that from a creative point of view? Anything I'm going to play getting to verse, I don't want to hear stuff in my, I don't want to, I know when the verse is coming up, So, thank goodness. I just couldn't do that gig. I mean, I'm not a player that can just go along with the thing that is the thing. I'm happy to work with. Now, obviously, session playing is all about working with the artist and the producer to come up with the part or the sound or the whatever that they're looking for in a thing, 100%. But I don't think I could dedicate my time to a gig that was that. No. So thank goodness that, and again, I couldn't have seen that twist in the road coming up either, but it did, and here we are.
Things have fallen into place quite nicely, which is What do you attest your that things happening for you? What is it about your playing and you that keeps you gainfully employed?
Well, I can, as many things as I can tell you that keep me gainfully employed, I can tell you have probably lost me the gigs too. You know, I mean, the truth is that I am a very in the moment feel kind of player. The minute a bass player comes up to me before a song on a session, it's like, what are you thinking on the kick drum? Like, I've kind of lost interest in like, of course we'll have the conversation, but I don't really want to have the conversation because I don't know what I'm thinking on the kick drum until I sit down and we start playing the song and the thing happens. And even then it might vary a little bit, but that's where the music is going to take me and hopefully you as well, you know? And I just feel like my scope, I think I've been a pretty diverse player. I can hit hard. I remember when those first Taylor records were out and those big choruses with the crash ride thing. And it's, you know, I remember working for a big producer in town after those records. And I remember hearing him talk to one of the things about how the teenage angst or whatever that came out of the parts of those records. And I get that, but that shouldn't take away from what I do. Like, he was almost saying it like, it was almost like trying to categorize me into a thing in a way. And it's like, yeah, I can do that. Now throw me on a James Taylor track. I can do that too. And now let's do brushes on a light brush train thing or a whatever. Like, I can do that too. And I love doing all the things, you know. It's very much a part of what makes me as a player is the diversity in the things we do. Yeah. And honestly, not to harp on about the Kenny thing, but that's a little bit why I love that gig too. There's a lot of it that's heavy hitting. It's one of the most heavy hitting gigs I've ever done. For sure. I have to warm up. I've got to get into shape. It's the whole thing. But there's also some subtle parts of that gig where you've got to be super musical around the song because to make the song the smooth. I think a lot about what would Carlos do here, or what would, you know, outside of the big heavy things that are super fun too. There's a lot of subtle things in there, and I love all of it. So I will tend to go for things. There are producers out there that don't like the going for things, and they don't, and even though I don't think many of them would admit it, they don't necessarily like too much personality coming out from the player in a particular thing. It could steer the direction of the song, you know, as it maybe as I feel like it should. But so I don't get called by those guys. They know that they want a package thing and they want it to be just this and that's it.
Yeah.
And my tendency is to try like, how can we make this? Is there anything to be had here? The singer's singing this thing right here. I could do a little thing with it, or just kind of move around it.
Yeah.
I kind of see it. Everything is like, how do you move around these melodies and rhythms so that the drums are acknowledging without snapping your neck too much, or, you know, how do you create these pockets within the thing by leaving a little extra time? I don't know. It's really dependent on the moment, but that's what I love about music, is the ability to be able to work through all those things and provide the thing. I think that's what I love about the gig with Kenny, is that the band is all in that mindset as well. We all work together like that, you know, which is great.
Everybody's probably like, it's a nice relief to not be playing with a track, not to be playing with a click. Yeah. You know what I mean? I play in a show that plays click all the and it's great. And then I come in here and then I'll play some Latin jazz thing or something else, a funk thing, and it's like, oh man, I've come alive as a player. You know, I mean, listen to music with exactly that, listening to those drummers, Picaro reacting to, and Carlos Vega and Russ Kunkel and Gary London and all of those, Copeland, just made you excited to play, you know, those other little, that's why I love Neil Peart so much, because his parts developed, his fills would develop, and it was emotional, it was a reaction, you know, electricity.
And he was also leading. He was also like forging a path that the band could all jump in together and go with him on. It was almost like he was just burrowing through the thing, not only listening to all the things, but creating a space that everybody can conversing. I mean, that's really what it is. We're all having a conversation together.
Yeah.
And I think, the click no click scenario is a really interesting conversation, because I know some people are like, the click kills it, or there's two sides. I will say with Kenny, it's almost the only live situation that I really actually benefit from the click, because I don't want to have to think about, especially when you're on a big stage. We're doing these huge stages, and then there's the whole T sort of thrusting on the front that the guys are running out on. So now they're in front of the front of house, far away from me, and I don't want to have to think about making sure that they know where the drums are, when who knows what they're hearing out there with all the sound deflection, whatever. We all have a common thread in that click, that I can go places, but I know that they know where. We all know where we're at, because we have this thing going, and it's not loud. I don't have it super loud in my ears. I just have it enough that I know it's like we all know that we're still on the same road together, and I get to really be me and not worry about any of the other stuff. I really love it for that. Also, I really love not counting off songs. I know that sounds ridiculous, but there's nothing better live than just hitting a thing. We all have a count. We all just start. And to anybody else out there, I'm not like, what? Like making sure everybody heard that where the one is. And, I don't have to think about that stuff. Like, let's just go. We all play together. We're good, So, yeah. In that scenario, it's a great tool.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. We have one other question here from Rob Andrews. Can Nick talk about preferred cymbal sizes, hats, crash, etc.?
Sure. I'm absolutely not a gear head by any means, but I will tell you, so I've been with Sabian for a long time, and I love those guys. And I mean, not only is obviously the product's great, and the range of product is great, but what I guess sucked me in was how great the folks were there. I felt like we were really like, it's like a family. Those guys are awesome, and they've been so good to me. So in the studio, regardless, I tend to go darker with cymbals. Definitely more on the artisan, even though some people see artisans as a little brighter, but I like the complexity of those cymbals, the HHX vibes, all those, and all the different varieties, because the HHX line is wide. In the studio, I tend to not go too big on cymbals. I mean, I 17 is an option, 18, and then maybe I'll have 20 on something. But I kind of think about cymbals not taking up too much space. If we're rocking, if everything's loud and you hit a cymbal, I don't want it. I want it to like disappear nicely. I don't want it just to go away all of a sudden, but I also don't want it to last for too long in the mix of things. Ride cymbals, same way. Like I tend to be a little more crash ridey on big rockin' tunes. I'd like it to stay low and like low pitch, so it's not too bright, not too overwhelming, and not last too long. So I do have a what is it? It's a HHX Groove ride. It's a 21, but I rarely ever use anything larger than that as a ride in the studio. I don't believe. But with Kenny's thing, same sort of scenario with the ride. I use a 20, and it's I don't actually know exactly what it is. It's one of these that came out of their,
Area 51 or whatever that is, right?
Yeah. And so it doesn't have particularly, but I think it's something based on like sort of the Garibaldi ride kind of thing. So it hits, you hear all the attack. It doesn't have a lot of sustain, but I can just beat the absolute hell out of it, and it's not going to be overwhelming to the whole mix, But the cymbals, the crashes I use with Kenny, the smallest is a 19.
Ooh, baby.
And then some different 20s on each side. Mostly because I love the warmth of it, and Sabian, those guys were Stanky particularly was like, man, can I please talk you into some different cymbals, because you're just going to be sending these back all the time cracked because of we're playing stadiums and I'm beating the absolute crap out of them. and I don't. Somehow, the way I hit them, I just don't crack them. They will get warped after a while, but I'm thankfully, even though it doesn't look like it, I'm pretty easy on cymbals. And hats, I have a soft spot for 15s. I tend to like 15-inch hats. Yeah. In fact, I hardly ever use 14s.
They're weird. They're small when you go to 14s afterwards. It's like, what is that?
Exactly. Sorry. And they don't, like, if I want small hats, I'll use a 12 or 13 for like a loopy kind of thing or something, if that's the case, or 15s. And I have anything from the HHX Groove hats, live and in the studio. My main go-to are 15-inch Artisans. They're dark, but not too dark. You can still rock on them. They don't just go away. I've used those forever, so.
Yeah, Sabian's got quite the palette.
They really do. I mean, that's the thing is I love that they're sort of effect cymbals. They get some really crunchy, interesting, cool things. I mean, I love the sounds. And I keep, with having this, like a session kit, I tend to not have too much stuff. I like having the voices and the toms. I like having a few different cymbals, but I don't have a ton of stuff. But Kenny's gig allows me to do so much that my kit has grown over the years. And I've got splashes, I love it. I love all the things. It's all just different sounds, different colors that you can get. There's so much opportunity because he allows me to do anything I want. I've got this really dark China. I can't even remember what it is on my left side. I love the Ozone, the HHX Ozone crashes are great too because it's sort of China crashy kind of vibe. As you can see, I'm not a big.
No, that's great.
But I love what I love. I don't know.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. Man, this has been such a fun chat for me and so easy to chat with you and appreciate time. One last thing, just wanted to, I imagine you get people saying, can we meet for coffee? Can we chat about, I want to be a drummer in Nashville. What do I need to do? I don't live there, or I don't live in a music town. What would you suggest to people?
I think, you've got to go out and play, right? And in order to do that, you've got to meet the folks that you're going to go out and play with. So if you were in Nashville, I would say go and see some ride-arounds and go and see some songwriters out there until you see one that you feel like, man, I really love those songs or whatever, and introduce yourself. You probably aren't going to make money right off the bat, but it's about getting out there and being the person for the gig, and playing stuff that you can connect with, so that the musicality that you can bring to it is natural, and you're not just playing the stuff that was on their record or whatever. Right. Next thing you know, especially for young artists and signed or unsigned, probably unsigned at this point, if they were going to use you on some recordings, how great. If you're in the band, they're going to take the band in. Great to be a part of that unit and learn from that deal. But more than anything, just go out and see people. And whether it's a ride around where you see that just the songwriter, or go out and just see bands play. When you meet a drummer or you see a drummer out there that you think is really great, go and meet them and just be cool about it. Just like, I really love the way you play. Want to get together, have coffee. I find I tend to gravitate towards the guys that are just themselves. They aren't trying to get something like, can you give me a gig? Because I can't do that. But I do know that if I get called for something, if somebody says, hey, I'm looking for a young guy that's blah, 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 whatever, the thing that's going to stand out is the vibe that we've had on the phone. And yes, I'll go and make sure that maybe I'll listen to something just to make sure that the whoever can play to some degree.
Sure.
But the best scenario is that you are chill in the hang, so that whoever that you're working for likes having you there, and then also you can play, and you come prepared, and you have all the stuff together, It's important to not take those things lightly, because
right.
Both being prepared and being cool are both very important things, So I guess that's it. I mean, you've just got to get out there. I mean, the best thing you can do is get yourself up on a stage. So you've got to get a place that you will get up on that stage, whether it's you've now doing a gig with this person, or the drummer recommended you for a thing. Whatever the thing is, you need to be the guy up on the stage playing, so that everybody else in the room is now like, oh man, I like that guy playing drums. And who knows where the things go from there? You know.
Fantastic. So, wow. What an amazing chat. And man, I think we actually got through pretty well everything.
Yeah.
And man, thank you so much for the 90 minutes almost. And thanks to everybody tuning in. That just whizzed by. And have fun at your gig tonight. And if you ever come up to Toronto with Kenny, I'd love to see you.
You know what? I don't often come. I don't know that Kenny plays Canada very much. Unfortunately, I wish he did. But I do occasionally go up there. A good friend of mine is a producer up there, and he occasionally flies me up there to play on some records for him up there. Noble Street Studio up there in Toronto.
Where's that? Okay. Who's the producer?
He's a guy named Doug Romanow.
Yeah.
And he and I have been friends for years, and I play on a bunch of stuff for him here, obviously. But there's occasionally I love coming up there. Being in Toronto, it's a great city. Anyway, thank you. Great interview. I love that you asked me some stuff that most folks don't get that far into the information. So thank you. It's great.
My pleasure. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for tuning in, and check out next time. We're going to have episode 87, and that will be announced really soon. Everybody take care.